What about DEI now? When you see major companies, Fortune 500 companies taking hits and some taking gains because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And some would say like, yo, we going AI. I don't want to feel obligated to do certain things, but for the certain people who have been oppressed, suppressed, and forgotten, we need our jobs. We need equal rights. What's your stance on that?
Ooh, let's hear it. This is John Hope Bryant, and we'll talk about who he is in a minute, but with Cam Newton on Cam Newton's podcast. What's the name of his podcast? Probably just Cam Newton. Cam Newton on the Cam Newton channel on YouTube. He has dope thumbnails. I'd never really watched him much. I knew he was doing something. He has 1.6 million views. I remember watching him at Auburn. Let's get back to it. Let's hear what John Hope Bryant, his answer is, what went viral about him talking about DEI. Is it dead?
What's your stance on that?
I don't care about DEI. I've said in op-eds in Time Magazine, Black Enterprise, and Fortune, you want to kill it, kill it. It's already been weaponized. It's been made political and emotional, and it's dead. DE&I as a program is effectively dead. I don't care about DE&I. I love diversity, and I love math because it doesn't have an opinion, and God has a sense of humor.
Right.
So for the first time in history, this country cannot succeed without all of us. In 1950, America was 90% white, not 1850, Cam. 1950. Today, America's 40% black and brown. Within 10 years, there'll be a majority of minorities. The biggest economy in the world, the U.S. First of all, you never had a superpower that wasn't the economic power at the same time.
Okay, he's going on to a different topic. We'll jump back there at 1 minute, 21 seconds. But I got to flesh out what he was saying so far here.
Rights. What's your stance on that?
I don't care about DEI.
So they're talking about DEI, and I don't know if we even know what the big picture of DEI is, because when I talk about DEI, for me, it's giving opportunities to someone who didn't deserve it. That's all the definition is to me. So if I give somebody an opportunity for whatever reason, because they got big, let's just say cojones, or women with big assets, that could be a reason why somebody does that. That's DEI to me. So it's not about just skin, and not that he said it was, but that's all it means to me. A lot of people think it means something else. I think it means something else to them. But the backdrop of this is Accenture recently announced they're scrapping their DEI hiring strategy. Intel announced significant layoffs. Microsoft announcing layoffs. And these are companies that are saying that basically we've dropped the DEI thing. Meta, probably the most famous of all these bunches is Meta, formerly Facebook. They axed their DEI team. Target ended its belonging at the bullseye strategy, which included programs supporting black employees and diverse suppliers. Walmart phased out racial equity or racial equality training and rainbow merchandise commitments. McDonald's kaput ceased its DEI representation goals. Pepsi, remember friend of the show, Carolyn Borisenko, broke the news on Pepsi. I believe it was Pepsi that in summer of one of the years, 2020, 2021, when things were crazy, she was one of the first to break all this DEI stuff. Disney scaled, and that was from Pepsi, Disney scaled back its Reimagine Tomorrow. A lot. I said Amazon, Google. I mean, it's Boeing. It's a lot of them canceling out. So what John Hope Bryant is saying is, he's not saying, I don't know if people misinterpreted. I got the vibe that people misinterpreted this. He's not saying he's against DEI. What he's saying is the program is no longer needed because the country is going to be forced into DEI.
I've said in op-eds in Time Magazine, Black Enterprise, and Fortune, you want to kill it, kill it. It's already been weaponized.
See, he's saying, oh, you want to take it, take it. He's not saying I don't like it. He's saying, well, we don't need it anymore. The branding's bad, doesn't poll well, basically. Employees don't like it. It's not effective anymore. It's been weaponized. So he's not blaming DEI for being weaponized. He's blaming other people for weaponizing it. So this isn't some guy who's saying DEI is bad.
Magazine, Black Enterprise, and Fortune, you want to kill it, kill it. It's already been weaponized. It's been made political and emotional, and it's dead. DE&I as a program is effective.
yes, it's dead, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't want it. So he'll continue on and say, well, I like diversity.
I don't care about DE&I. I love diversity. And I love math because it doesn't have an opinion. And God has a sense of humor.
Right.
So for the first time in history.
So this is very interesting what he's saying here. He's not saying he's against DEI. He's basically saying I like DEI, but it's dead. Unfortunately dead. That's what he's saying. I'm pretty confident I'm following him here. So he's saying that it's dead, unfortunately, because I like diversity. But he's like, well, I'm doing the math of the country. When he says he likes math, he's not saying I like math because you don't have to think about race when you do math problems, because it's either right or wrong, whether you're the race that got it right or race that got it wrong. I love math. In another lifetime, I was a math major, believe it or not. So I understand, but that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is I like math and I look at the composition of the country. Joe Biden opened up the borders, let the floodgates of, that's why he's saying black and brown. They don't say black people anymore. They say black and brown. Why? Because they can't talk about blacks. They're talking about these others that are being in. I mean, they call Palestinians browns, basically. So he's saying the blacks and browns now mathematically are going to have the numbers. So he's saying, why do we need DEI programs when the country is going to be DEI? That's what he's saying.
This country cannot succeed without all of us. In 1950, America was 90% white. Not 1850, Cam. 1950. Today, America's 40% black and brown. Within 10 years, there'll be a majority of minorities. The biggest economy in the world, the U.S. First of all, you never had a superpower that wasn't the economic power at the same time. In the history of the world, Rome, France, Germany, you never had a superpower that wasn't economic. So we're the superpower, we're the economic power. And 70% of the U.S. economy, about $29 trillion, is consumer spending. That's you and me, going to restaurants, going to lunch, playing video games, buying our phones. That's consumer spending. Or the plane tickets that we bought. That's us. The future of this economy, you cannot, my rich friends eat my poor friends do better if only to stay rich. Even the racist wins when black people succeed going forward, because.
Follow me here. What he's saying is that he's basically saying the whites are going to be forced to uplift the blacks, is what he's saying.
Does GDP rise?
Because if you don't uplift the blacks, then America won't be a superpower.
We're having the wrong argument. In fact, we're arguing. There's no need to argue. There's not enough college-educated, successful white men to drive GDP, gross domestic product, for the next 20 years. So unless my white friends want to be speaking Mandarin in 20 years, meaning Chinese, or taken over by Russia, which is not likely, but unless you want to be speaking another language, we better figure out in the next 5 or 10 years that we're better together. So this is what's happening now is fear. This is a third reconstruction.
You see what he said there? Was that a threat? He was like, basically he said white people.
We're having the wrong argument. In fact, we're arguing.
He said there's no need to argue because it's going to be at some point 40% white and 60% others. Why is that? Not organically, really. You do have interracial, you have mixing, but because you open the floodgates. So you open the floodgates, and obviously this take here isn't anti-immigration. It's not pro-black, but what he's saying is you open up the gates, the floodgates, we won't have enough productivity in this country unless whites do something to give the blacks, whether the blacks can read or not. What's the let's look at this. The blacks and browns. I don't do blacks and browns. I'm just the blacks. So when you look at the blacks, what's one of the big problems? Education. Many can't read. Many in high school reading at very rudimentary levels. What he's saying is you're going to have no choice but to figure out a way to milk productivity out of them to get money to stay as a superpower. Otherwise, whites, you're going to speak Chinese. That's what he's saying. What else could he be saying? If the blacks aren't doing education, the blacks aren't contributing to the GDP, the whites are right now, vast majority. That's what he said. That's what he's saying. There's not enough whites to keep it going as they dwindle. Okay, so what he's saying is the blacks that can't read or are struggling, don't value education, whatever the case is, whatever groups those are, he's saying the whites are going to have to do something to pick them up. And that what he's saying is that action is going to be the same as what we wanted with DEI in the first place.
There's no need to argue. There's not enough college-educated, successful white men to drive GDP, gross domestic product, for the next 20 years. So unless my white friends want to be speaking Mandarin in 20 years, meaning Chinese, or taken over by Russia, which is not likely, but unless you want to be speaking another language, we better figure out in the next 5 or 10 years that we're better together.
So that's what he's really meaning when he says better together. It's not some righteous phrase for you to get excited about. It means that whoever's succeeding, doesn't matter the skin color, but it's mostly whites driving the economy. He's saying that your white ass is going to have to pick up these pieces and make them work. I mean, welfare isn't count. You're gonna have to get them working, doing something in your companies, getting them jobs somehow, some way, or you're going to be speaking Mandarin. Let me know what you think.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.